January, right? Often described as a reset, a fresh start for all of us. But the emotional aftermath of the holidays can really make the month a challenging time, especially for separated families. And Gabriella Pomare, lawyer and author of The Collaborative Co-Parent, is here to walk us through some solutions. Good morning to you. So great to see you.
Good morning.
So let's dig into this. For families already separated, how can January just intensify some unresolved conflict?
Realistically, in January, I see so many families who are exhausted. I mean, the holidays bring so much stress, and particularly when you're separated, I think you're coming down off that high, and then reality sets in. So what we really need to do is start to reset and say, how do I want to change my co-parenting relationship into a new year? How do I want to help my kids? It's taking that real responsibility as an adult and saying, I'm going to start putting my children first to give them a better year with their parents.
And the intention is there, but how does the pressure to fix everything, in this 1 month actually make co-parenting a little bit harder?
It can, but I think realistically, if we start making small moves from early on in the year, we can make big change for our kids. So little things like have more predictable routines for your children in place. Start changing the way you communicate with your co-parent. Now, it's easy for me to say, it's difficult. Co-parenting is tough. Separation and divorce, they're difficult topics, particularly in January when you're coming off exciting times like the holidays. But if you start doing things like calmer handovers, changeovers, if you're a bit more flexible in your arrangements, you're already benefiting the way your children are experiencing their parents' separation.
And it doesn't need to be perfect, right? How can parents just go ahead and reduce all that friction?
Absolutely. I think small changes. You're never going to be a perfect co-parent. Nobody is. I certainly aren't. But I think if you're doing little things, and the biggest one for me is communication. And that's very hard when you're in the middle of a separation and even years down the track, even if you're an experienced co-parent. So the biggest thing I recommend is the power of the pause. Slow down. Listen to what your co-parent's actually saying. And that often makes it easier because you're not rushing in to start that argument. You're not engaging in a text war. Things will end up working out better if you just slow down, listen before you react.
And I was reading in your book, you mentioned communication, but also emotional regulation matters just as much, if not more. What does emotional regulation actually look like in day-to-day co-parenting?
I think what it really means is listening to what your co-parent's saying before, as I said, you rush to respond. So regulate yourself. And I know it's easy for me to say, but a lot of that comes down to the healing process. It takes time to heal post-separation. And I think until you've done the work yourself and you're able to move forward and say, I'm taking the emotion out of it. There may have been things in our relationship, difficulties in our separation that I'm going to put aside for the sake of my child, rather than bring that part of the conflict into the decisions that I'm making for my child. And as I say, it's the power. We've got the power as co-parents to make that decision, to take out the emotion, to do things with our children at the forefront of our minds.
And you mentioned that, that's the keeping your eyes on the prize, your children. Any warning signs that they're maybe not coping as well as they could be with the current arrangement that we can look out for?
Absolutely, and I think January is a big one for that because, again, as you're coming off the holidays, it's a big transition for kids. A lot of parents say to me, but my children were fine over the holidays. They were happy. There's no difficulties. And then as soon as school comes back and the routine kicks back in, there's a lot of warning signs. They go back to school. They might feel disrupted. They're speaking out in class. They're having difficulties with teachers, with friends. They're going to their room. They're keeping to themselves. And that could simply be because they haven't processed that emotion of the separation, of the conflict within their family. So if I can say anything to co-parents out there, keep your children out of the conflict. They don't need to hear what's going on. They don't need to be involved in those adult decisions. Even if you think they're doing okay, it's likely that they're not.
Some great advice. Gabriella, thank you so much. Happy New Year. The Collaborative Co-Parent is out right now.